Portals essentially are places on the landscape where the laws of physics as we know them behave a little bit differently. And it only takes a small deviation from the electromagnetic spectrum to alter the information perceived and received by the human body.
Welcome to Spiritual Rockstar Podcast, where world-changing spiritual entrepreneurs come to deeply awaken the power within to bring forth their greatest purpose, while enjoying being in tune with all life and real wealth in all aspects of their lives. I'm your host, Daniel John Hanneman. And welcome everybody to Spiritual Rockstar Podcast Show. We are so grateful. We have a truly amazing guest today. Oh my God, I was just talking to him and I was just saying, listen, you know so many things I have no clue about. And I'm so fascinated by what Freddy Silva is going to be sharing with us today. He's been on all kinds of shows, Gaia TV, History Channel, whatever. He's appeared all over the place as a foremost expert in all kinds of things related to, well, I don't even want to get it wrong. So I'll just say all kinds of cool stuff, crop circles and megaliths and, so much more, which I'm sure we'll touch on probably at least today, those types of things. So anyway, I'm so grateful to have you here today, Freddie.
I like your bio better than mine. Knows lots of cool stuff. I said that gets rid of so many things already.
So, well, I'm going to give even more. We're going to get, we'll get into a little bit more. So, Freddy Silva is a best-selling author, leading research in ancient civilizations, restricted history. I love that part. I want to get into that. Sacred sites and their interaction with consciousness. He is also the leading expert on crop circles. He has published 9 books in 6 languages, produced 14 documentaries. That alone is mind-blowing. Freddy's most recent book, Portals, Energetic Doorways to Mystical Experiences Between Worlds, described by one CEO as perhaps the best metaphysical speaker in the world right now. He's a fascinating speaker. He leads sellout tours to sacred sites worldwide. And for 2 decades, he has been an international keynote speaker with notable appearances at the International Science and Consciousness Conference, the International Society for the Study of Subtle Energies and Energy Medicine, and the Association for Research and Enlightenment. In addition to appearances, like I said, Gaia TV, History Channel, BBC, and radio shows such as Earth Ancients, Fade to Black, and Coast to Coast. You can find him at invisibletemple.com. So let's dive right into this, Freddie. In spiritual circles, you do hear about there's these portals out there. But for some people listening, I'm sure they don't know what the heck we're talking about. I feel like I only barely know what I'm talking about on that. So tell us, what the heck you got a whole book about portals. So what are portals?
They're very cool things.
I like that answer.
That takes care of that. No, I mean, portals essentially are places on the landscape where the laws of physics as we know them behave a little bit differently. And it only takes a small deviation from the electromagnetic spectrum to alter the information perceived and received by the human body and its effect on consciousness. So these are the hotspots where shaman and other interesting people over millennia have stood, and they said, hey, stand here and the veil between worlds is much thinner and we can access a library of information, download the information, and then we can give it to the tribe. And it's going to be for personal development, for the betterment of the tribe and the world in general. And back in the day when we weren't building anything, you could sense this stuff everywhere. And they are pretty much everywhere. They're not just here and there. They are pretty much like all the meridian points on the human body. The Earth also had its own meridians. And when we forgot to do all of this, in order that we would not forget where these hot spots of energy are, we began to build things like pyramids and Stonehenge on top of them to make sure that the big rocks would never go away. And you'd know that in times like we are today, we'd know where to go to hang out with these places so that we can just download the tools that will enable us to reconnect with the finest level of reality and hopefully save ourselves and save this very overworked planet.
Wow. Well, I was listening to you on, I believe it was Next Level Soul podcast, and there's so many subjects you were covering there too. I'm like, it's just like a feast of different things. But one of the things that's often talked about is with all these megaliths and stuff like you mentioned, Stonehenge. You've got with the pyramids in Egypt, or you've got all these different sites that some people talk about, especially as pyramids, that there's also the coordination of, the spots that they are, and there's this grid, and the ancient aliens or whatever, like the aliens that come, or these whatever you want to call them, they come down and set this all up, and these are landing stations and all this sort of stuff. I'm really fascinated by that. I wonder what you can tell us about what you know about that through all your research of, is this true that actually people from, other worlds or whatever came here, set up the earth and set up all these sites? And I've got lots of questions, but let's start there.
I mean, essentially, after 30 years of research and now having the hindsight of going back in time and looking at this from a bigger point of view, it seems to me that these places are used for a number of reasons. Yes, they are interstellar communication points. Even NASA knows this because in 2008, they discovered using wonderful taxpayers' money, using a nice piece of equipment up in the sky, they found that every 8 minutes, and they actually addressed this by the term magnetic portals, like these vortices, like tubes that go from the Earth. They cross with the solar wind 1,000 miles above the atmosphere, and the information comes out of the Earth, goes straight to the sun, and quite possibly beyond that. So these are locations all over the planet that are communicating with the other stellar bodies. So using that as a blueprint, then you can also say that it enables information to come in from other parts of the universe onto the planet as well, because a tube is a two-way a unit of communication. If you were to say this to the Hopi or to the Persians or to the Japanese, they'll say, absolutely, because those places that we've earmarked as being special, whether they are kivas or whether they are sacred mountains or sacred caves, they occupy exactly the same spots. And they know these by the different names. They usually call them the reed of the sky, the ladder of heaven, or the sipapu reed. And in every case, there are these sort of, again, magnetic tubes that allow the soul of the shaman to go upstairs and information to come down into the sacred space. So, yes, matter is all about to do with frequencies. So you can also argue the fact that these are also places used by interstellar pilots. And there are places in Guatemala and Central America where people look after the temples overnight. They have observed ships landing there, literally materializing in the middle of the plaza, exactly where you expect it. And people going about their business, literally walking into a pyramid as though the stones were made of flour, and then they come out again, and poof, off they go. But the main project here on Earth was to create this sort of self-help center where you, or an insurance policy, as the Egyptians called it, whereby you have these places where you and I can actually access them whenever we need to reconnect with ourselves and discover what the hell we're doing down here, and also improve ourselves. And it's been said throughout many ancient mystery schools that if you understand your place in the universe, where you come from as a soul, and what you've come here to do on the planet, if you're able to access that information, then you can bring that into your consciousness and live your life fully aware, which is wonderful because then you're not going shopping and watching television all the time and watching your cell phone all the time. You're actually here consciously being useful and making the best of your 80 years on your planet, on this planet. And if you can do that, then the experience becomes valid, becomes very real. And when you physically die, you go back to the collective and you can say, you know what, I become a better person or a better soul as a result of the experience because I had access to specialist information that gave me a little bit of a heads up as to what's really going on, and I could make better use of my life. So this is the reason why temples and sacred sites were built in the first place. It was to allow you to have those moments of introspection. And some people might call it an expanded imagination, and that's fine because that's what it is. You are connecting with a tangible place in the universe that allows you to believe that it's very real in its level of reality, just as you are in yours, because it is real. It's not just the fact that it's a figment of the imagination; it's your imagination literally recreating through a series of chain commands through these sorry, it's a bit humid here, through the spectrum of frequency that allows your brain to make sense of the information that you're receiving. So your dreams, your visions that you're getting in these sacred sites and these hotspots are absolutely real. And I wouldn't have written this book if I didn't believe that, because so many of those experiences were my experiences. And I didn't believe this was even possible. So I'm actually talking from experience where I've also hopefully become a better person over 30 years of experiencing these portals.
Wow, that leads me to a question of how did you get initiated to the work that you're doing? I mean, obviously something awoken inside you that says this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So now I'm curious about that.
Well, there was a pub involved. No. Although I can't say pubs can be portals too. I believe that we're all born to come here with a mission. Some are very lucky, they get it right off the bat, but some of them take years and decades to finally work out what it is. I kind of was lucky around the age of 35. Although I've been drawing pyramids since I was 3, and I did not belong to my peers. All kids hated me and they thought I was weird because I was into different things. I was not into beating people up and and chasing girls all the time and all of that stuff. I felt uncomfortable here on the planet, and in some ways I still do. I feel like I've just been dropped here by accident to do something. But when I was researching crop circles, that's what got me into this whole game. And little did I know that the crop circles were exactly the same method of creation as a pyramid, a stone circle, and so forth. It's the same mechanism done by the same beings from a long time ago. So just using physical objects in this case. So when I had a chance to research crop circles and made a connection between sacred space and ancient temples, and after my first book became an international bestseller, I had the opportunity then to quit my job. A big leap of faith, it really was, and then go and investigate the ancient temples, and that's where I really got drawn into it. But again, I really didn't know. I kind of believed that there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes in terms of the subtle energy universe at these sacred sites. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what was possible. So when I have experiences of leaving the body or being levitated in a crop circle or watching people dressed in white tunics coming out of the walls of the king's chamber in the Great Pyramid, I'm not making it up because I didn't know that was even possible. And it's those experiences that shape my life because they're direct experience. But then again, I realized later on now that that's all part of what I wanted to do in the first place, because my job is to be a better teacher of ancient systems of knowledge. And I accept that now. I didn't know it at the time, but that's what my passion's always been about the ancient things. So when I go to these places, I ask the question, how can I transmit what this is for to a wider audience? How can I be a better teacher of this? And of course, the information comes up, and it usually startles me in ways I had not imagined. So that's how I kind of got into it, by literally by direct experience of this interchange between worlds, seeing unusual things, even picking up goblins in stone circles. And I mean, literally picking up a goblin that's holding my finger after a meditation. That was the weirdest thing. And the people in the group that I work with, they saw the same thing. So we know we're not making it up. So when you have those experiences, it does give you a certain permission um, to speak from experience and from a level of comfort. So if it happens, it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody, and that's why I decided to do this.
Right. I mean, those are phenomenal experiences. Ones that, as much as I've had interesting experiences, whatnot, I'm like, whoa, that's pretty wild, and not too surprising at another level, but still like, wow. I've had friends have taken pictures of, like, you could literally make out that this is an angel in this room, like things like,
Mm.
just those type of things, even like just all kinds of things that are going on that most people would say, "Oh, there's got to be another explanation," and all that kind of stuff. And we are so um, connected to something that, just whatever, called source, God, whatever. And I've done demonstrations. A lot of people just don't want to believe. They just want to think I'm doing like illusion magic, like I'll make lights turn on and off without using the switch or something, like so whatever, different demonstrations make the weather do this or that, and it's okay, this is what's going to happen. People just like, oh, that's interesting, like, what with the videos I've put out, like, people usually don't say much, like they're just like, well, we don't know if that's real. And So it's funny. We're very, whereas like the people you talked about, the Hopi or all these different, people, like they're like, of course that's real, right? I
Yeah,
mean, there's so many people that do understand, like this is completely like, just, of course, because they've been given that from a young age. Their culture is centered around that in some cases, right? I mean, the Hopi
exactly.
people for sure. I mean, they're. I feel like their whole mission is to, in part, is in their own way, is to help wake up humanity, right? That culture. I don't know if you agree with that, but I have no idea. I only
Closer to
know what I
nature.
know, but
Yeah, they're closer to nature. They
yeah.
understand the subtlety of nature and they accept it. And that's the big difference between us and in the Western world and also the ancient people around the planet. And the more I talk to them, the more I realize they're light years ahead of us. I mean, we tend to think of things as being, being very linear, whereas they think of in the round. That's how the universe works, in circular spiraling motions. That's how it is. And today's science can back that up. So once you understand how it works and you can accept it, you don't have to believe it. If you accept it, then the universe comes to meet you, and that's the rule. The invisible universe is not going to interact and intercede on your behalf or with you unless you give it permission, consciously or otherwise. And because there is that rule where that we're not going to force anything onto you, especially if you're not feeling comfortable with the idea. And I have been in places in England where we're looking at the mounds where 80% of them, there's no one buried in them. So why they're called burial mounds, no one knows. But they are marking those invisible lines of energy that cross the landscape everywhere. So they're markers. And I have been at places where, these, balls of light are dancing everywhere. And I have people next to me who are scared shitless, to coin a phrase. And I'm going, are you afraid? Because they're thinking, I'm hearing them saying that they're going to go away unless everybody's in agreement. And I said, stop being afraid because they're not going to stay here if you're afraid. We're not
Right.
afraid. We're curious. I mean, there's nothing to be
Yeah.
afraid of. I'm sure if anything was untoward, they would have melted us with their mind power by now. But the thing is, there is a wonderful sense of communication and connection, and it's a very loving feel as well. So nothing to be afraid of. And I think that once you give that idea away to these entities that you're interacting with, then they come closer, and they're still not going to push anything onto you. It's almost
Right.
by example, and that's the wonderful thing. I mean, I remember talking to the late Zuni elder Clifford Mahuti, who was talking to me. He used to work for NASA, by the way. He used to talk to me about going out to the cliffs in New Mexico and coming to talk to the flying shields, as they called them, and said, "Yeah, yeah, they're still coming after thousands of years, and we exchange information every few months, and then they go back to where they come from, and they come again 3 months later, and it's like having tea with your uncle." I said, "Yep." And we agreed to go out and sit on the cliff one day, and of course, then he passes away. It's like, oh, damn it. So I'll have to find another elder to hang out with. But it happens all around the world because people are so much more connected with the bigger scheme of nature and how it really works. They don't question it. They accept that you are part of one radio station along many radio stations along the dial. Some of them just take a little bit more effort to find. That's the difference. But they accept it.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, one of the places I have gone to, because I haven't been a person that's tracked off to all these, the ones that I advertise. This is a huge portal and all that stuff. But I have gone to Sedona a few times, and of course, like there's tons of people that go there. Now, I had the good fortune of going during COVID. Actually, I managed to get out there, and there was very few people there compared to normal. I mean, it was kind of very interesting. It's a whole different experience of it, but there are so many vortexes and portals like in a places like that. Sit in this spot, see what you feel here. I remember the first time I went there, and I had never gone to a place like that really for any length of time before. I'm like, okay, I was leading a spiritual retreat myself. I took people there. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do all this stuff there. And then once I got there, I'm like, oh, it's doing it to us, like so to speak. Like we're in this, there's not as much for me to have to do because you're just in it, And that's the power of being in those places is if you do want to lead those type of things, like yeah, I mean it, like from what I've heard, the little I know, like I said, everyone, which makes sense. They all have different sort of vibrations, intentions, sort of in them, right? In a sense. And, you know, I don't know. So I've heard different ideas about that with different places, but yeah, it's pretty wild. If you haven't been to a place like that, when you go there, you're like, for real. I bet you hear that a lot when people go on tours with you.
Yeah, and I also try to sort of bring things into perspective because sometimes a lot of the experience comes from your own need for validation, and that's completely
Mm.
wrong. That's one of the reasons why I actually wrote this book, because it was an unusual book in that you put the science up front, the reason why these things happen, and there's a lot of science behind it. You have
Mhm.
people's experiences in the middle, and at the back, I actually give you a lot of good ideas on how to do the best in with your work at these places. Sedona is a classic example. Yeah, it is special. Yes, there are portals there, but you know what? They're also expanding at the same level as there are Jeep companies taking you to these portals. So
Right.
if you read between the lines, yeah, it becomes a tourist attraction and they're making stuff up left, right, and center. Because if you just go there and say, I don't really understand what's going on, I don't really know the mechanism behind this, but I accept something's going on and I'm looking for something specific and let it go and expect nothing. And believe me, you will be guided to one of these places. And I also guarantee you there'll be nobody there because everybody's off on the Jeep trail to these portals that really don't exist. They're just there to make money. And I found a couple more in my last trip in Sedona. Literally, I had a sort of a map app which tells me other trails that people don't seem to find. I wanted just a few hours by myself, and I found myself in an old sacred cave, sharing the place with one other person who was there for exactly the same reason. They said, "Yeah, all that stuff over there on the other side of the mountain doesn't feel right." I said, "No, there's nothing." I call it the tingly-wingly. I wasn't getting the tingly-wingly. That here, I'm getting the tingly-wingly. And I did some research. It turns out it was a sacred cave for what I think it was the Sinawa tribe. And
Mm.
I've always enjoyed being around places where the Sinawa used to hang out. Same energy in terms of what we're both looking for. And there's another place in Wupati Canyon where there's a cliff dwelling there. That's very special as well. But again, it's going to these places without expectation and saying, I need something in which to make myself whole. I'm feeling out of sorts. How can I make myself, feel much more whole within myself? Or in my case, I'm looking for information about this particular subject so I can teach it. And I just let it go. I go for a walk and, 9 times out of 10, if I'm in the right frame of mind, because you've got to clear your mind, uh, I'll come back with notes, research, and boom, I've already connected with the spirit of place. So, but these things are everywhere. They're sometimes in New York, for example. I was having the same conversation on another podcast from a gentleman from New York, and he said, "It would be great to have a portal in New York." I said, "Oh, you got lots. Just walk around Midtown. Look at where the Scottish Rite Freemasons used to hang out, and where they built buildings where you feel totally integrated into the building. That's their way of designing a temple in the modern era. Or go to Central Park. There's an obelisk there that was put there by the Scottish Rite, and they're the Scottish Rite, by the way, are the Knights Templar." Who became the Scottish Rite Freemasons. They just changed their name to survive. And before them, they used to be called the Essenes. So same, different people, different names, but same aim. And they brought back this obelisk. They plonked it in Central Park in a very auspicious location. And I can guarantee you, you don't have to touch the obelisk. You can just stand within its girth and you will recognize that you are somewhere special because there is a hot spot there. And there's another place in Central Park, which is a glacial erratic, big outcrop of rock, not far from where the lake is, looking at downtown. There's another hot spot right there. So yeah, you just have to sort of reach out with your feelings. Now, I sound like
Mhm.
Luke Skywalker, don't I? You reach out with your feelings, and I'll put this question to the spirit of place, and it responds. So that's your relationship. There's no reason why today we can't do this because we really need it more than now because we're losing that connection. We're trying to intellectualize the whole process, and that will only take you so far. You've got to get out there into the landscape and ask the right questions, and then be surprised by the answer.
Right. I remember I used to fight the idea that these places were even like that special. Like but before I went to one, I was like, oh, because I started off with metaphysics, and I'm like, we're just infinite power, and we just make it all happen, and screw the environmental factors and this and that. We transcend it all, and all those kind of ideas, and then. I did go briefly through Sedona once. I'm like, man, it feels like everything's magnetized around here or something. Like I could actually feel it. I'm like, oh, it's not. I'm not. And I'm like, okay, then eventually I did lead a retreat there. And then when I really got into it, I didn't just like drive through, which is basically all I did the first time. I actually got into the places. I'm like, and we did have a really good guide because he had been there for decades and knew about, little known places and stuff like that. And as wasn't into all the just Jeep tour or something type of stuff. So it was pretty cool.
He
Went with
chose
him a couple.
wisely.
Yeah. And so but yeah, I mean, I was just people still, that went with me still talk about being there, right? From that one trip, there, and they're like, wow, I'll never forget, being in Sedona and the experience I had on this place or that place. I get them all mixed up, by the way. I'm the opposite of you. I can't keep all the facts straight. I'm like, we're in the courtyard, we were here or there. I don't know. I don't remember. It's cool. I tend to be just cool. But yeah, how profound it is to go to these spots is
Mm.
amazing. And yet I think that's so true, like that you brought up, like there's portals all over the place. I mean, that we're not taking advantage of just being guided to go to a space locally, and or on a forest walk somewhere or wherever, right? Like wherever you
Exactly.
are, there are hot spots. And I love that. It's almost like an analogy to the phone, right? Like, yeah, you could kind of be connected anywhere, right? But certain places the signal's stronger. So I kind of like,
Exactly. Just go where the ancients used to go, even in North America where we are. I mean, I'm in Maine, and we had the Abenaki. There was a sacred site that they used to use in downtown Portland, and I used to live on it. There was a 1830 building, and the people that lived there, they always said there's something unusual about the building. And then it took me to show up as a renter to tell them, yeah, it is very special. And I can tell you exactly where it is, but just by dowsing and showing the lines of energy congregating in the middle of the building, which is exactly where one of the healers in the building used to work. And he said, I always wondered why I wanted to work in the back room because my front room is much nicer. I said, yeah, but you're not in the portal. That's why your patients want to be there as well. They don't want to do this at home. So these things are everywhere. And I think even when you get to like Utah or Arizona, if you look at the big walls of petroglyphs that you find in the landscape, we now know from science that they actually mark the points in geology where two different types of rock happen to meet. And when you get those two different types of rock, you get what's called a continuity discontinuity. The Sioux had a much easier way to remember this. They call it scan, and it's a special energy that happens at these spots, which is electromagnetic and also gravitational, which allows you to soar to another level of reality. That's why they put the pictograms where they are. So when you see a big collection of pictograms, that's where people resonated with the spirit of place. They could sense that something was happening that was transcendental, and they wrote the experience on the rocks. So wherever you find that, you guarantee that there's a portal right there. But there's also other things happening. I mean, going back to the geology in Sedona, you have water percolating through a lot of limestone, and that limestone has a lot of iron in it, which is why it's red. So just the fact of water percolating through limestone creates an electrical current. So the whole basin of Sedona is a big electrical current. What you have to do then is find the places where that current is a bit stronger. Same thing with Stonehenge. It's not only at the edge of a boundary of two different types of rock, it's also on the world's deepest chalk aquifer, which is the chemical equivalent of chalk. So the whole of southern Britain, with its thousands of sacred sites, is the reason why the sites are there in the first place. They're already picking up on that. And then it gets stranger because when we started to build stuff and put rocks on these things, they didn't just say, let's go over there and pick that rock. Oh no, we'll go to that one 400 miles away because it has the ingredient in the stone that allows the energy in the landscape to be retained by the stone. So the stones behave like batteries. And there was a skeptic in France in the 1950s and 60s called Pierre Mérot, who actually went around prodding the stones in Karnak and Brittany, thousands of them. And he said, no, this is all nonsense. It's all New Age nonsense. And he wrote one of the best books about proving the energy and the structure of how the stone behaves at megalithic sites, how the dolmens behave like coils, the standing stones behave like these sort of solenoids, and the stone circles behave like batteries. And the energy is attracted to these stones, it concentrates, and then it builds up and it discharges every 70 minutes or so. So he was absolutely right. So if you happen to go to these places at the wrong time of day and you touch it and the stone hasn't been grounded, you get one hell of an electric shock. And I'm talking from experience, by the way. I read this in dowsing manuals, and I thought maybe just making it up, maybe it's just coincidence because you're holding a metal copper rod, so something's going to happen. No, I have been foolish enough to touch one of the rocks. When I looked at the rock, and I said, the rock looks like it's want to talk. It hasn't talked to anybody for a long time. Oh, big mistake. I literally had to be pulled away from the rock because I was glued to it. I had to go to sleep for 24 hours. I woke up with a headache, and then I couldn't stop speed talking because I could remember everything that the stone downloaded in those few seconds that my hand was glued to it. I could see weddings, funerals, births, deaths, duels, love proposals. It was all memorized by whatever happened around the perimeter of the soul of the rock, which is much larger than the rock itself. And again, Moreau picked up all of this using his specialist equipment. So thank God for that. So we now know that there's a real science at work here. So the portals that have been there for thousands of years, probably millennia, are being enhanced by the megaliths that we put on them for the last 5,000 years. So it's continuing. The whole process of these hotspots is continuing to our era by people who I think foresaw the need in the 21st century to connect with these places. So that's why they built big these things with big rocks. You know, when small bricks would have done. No, big rock is not going to go anywhere for a long, long time. So they're doing us a huge favor.
Yeah, yeah. So, because yeah, it's like I don't know, so many things here, but talking about the energy, they were talking about with that stone and touching it and what the effect it had on you. Um, like that's an experience that people get in smaller doses all the time in those portals, or a lot of people do anyway, not everybody. But like what it reminded me of though is when I always talk about this tuning in that I'll do a little bit later, but like the whole method that I use with it and everything that I teach is just the first time I had an experience of really opening up to the divine and all knowing and all that. Like it was a crystal skull. It was just the guy just says, put your third eye on this crystal skull here. And I put my third eye on the crystal skull, and I just had this overwhelming transcendent feeling and experience of knowing everything. And it went away like right away because my mind of disbelief came in right away. It says, this can't be real. This is crazy. But I after that, it stood with me so much that I developed a whole, system around tuning in without a crystal skull, but to tune in that, I've taught to so many people. It's all based on, sort of like a portal, portal through this crystal skull that opened me up. So there's a lot of, I'm sure you could tell a lot of stories what you've seen for people happen at these portals, right?
I mean, yeah, anybody can do it. It's just that we get talked out of it by peers
Yeah.
or your parents or whatever, or because you feel you don't want to be embarrassed in front of your friends. Forget about all of that. That they're on their particular journey, you're on your journey, and the worst thing to do is end up dead at the end of your life with regrets that you didn't follow that God-given natural ability. I mean, I know I'm grateful for it because I always had this a strange sense of intuition about things, but I didn't know what it was because no one was around to explain to me what it was that I was sensing, and it was real. And of course, later on in life, when I have people who really do know what's going on, and I've been very lucky to have some really great teachers, they said, no, what you've been experiencing is actually real. It's just that you've been taught not to believe this stuff. And the whole thing of, stop talking to fairies. But I can see the fairies, Dad, when you're 5, and you can, by the way, you still have one foot in the other world. One of the things that I really enjoyed is watching other people when they go on tour with me. And one of the very raw places of power is up in Lake Titicaca. There's a big stone mountain. It's literally packed with iron, and that someone's carved a false door in it. It goes about 2 feet into the actual mountain, and it's shaped in the shape of a T. So that's a culturally shared symbol. It's called the breath of God, or as they call it in Japan, the Tao or the Tai. So literally, wherever goes through that portal is the breath of creation itself. And went there for the first time with my guide, Edgar, who's an Aymara, another very ancient people. And I said, I'm getting that sort of tingly-wingly that we shouldn't be here this late in the day and the sun's beginning to go down. And he's looking a bit apprehensive, says, I don't like coming here at the end of the day. It's like I'm being sucked into this. I said, okay. We'll come back tomorrow. I got a better sense. Yeah, I want to come back tomorrow. Okay, let's agree on that. And but I thought, because I have to write about this, I said I just want to experience it for a few seconds. And I put my forehead to the doorway. It's like someone was drilling a red laser through my forehead. I went, okay, we're out. Let's go back to the bus. We'll come back in the morning. And I'm being sucked into the actual thing. And I found out later on, just by talking to the local people, they said, you're very lucky because last week a guy was here with a few other people. He physically disappeared into that portal. He came back 2 days later, and he's still not the same because he's obviously had a great experience. It wasn't bad. It's just that it's so discombobulating that he doesn't understand it yet. It's taking him a while to ground the experience. So I guess he must have wanted it, but he physically went through the doorway and he came back 2 days later, completely gaga. They didn't sort of do experiments on him or anything. He just experienced the other world for a short space of time. But we came back in the morning and found the energy much more convivial, and people had the most incredible experiences. But that's what I enjoy, is listening to other people literally see and experience what I'm seeing and what I'm experiencing, but I don't tell anybody. I don't want to give them a prejudice of what they expect to
Right.
see. I
Right.
want
That's
them
what I
to
figured.
experience their own thing. I'm not going to put words into their mouth or anything. So
Right.
if we're in the king's chamber and if the energy is right and the conditions are right and where the group is of a like mind, I'm astonished that 60% of people in my group, and I can only take about 20 people in there. I don't want to take any more. I want to keep it personal and profitable. There's got to be a balance between the two. And 60% of the people will see what I can see while I'm doing a meditation in complete darkness in that room. And sometimes it's more people coming out of the stones and surrounding us. Sometimes the floor disappears. Sometimes the ceiling disappears, and you can see the stars in the Milky Way. And I haven't said a word, and they'll describe exactly what I've experienced. So it's good confirmation for me, but then I can confirm it for them as well. So it is amazing that these things are still very much alive and ticking, mostly because people like us are going there and giving it a little bit of thought of appreciation. It's like we're watering the plant, so to speak.
Mhm.
And the more appreciation you give it, the more energy you're giving the portal, you're cleansing it, and then it reciprocates by giving us something that we're looking for. It may be healing, it may be an insight, but very useful regardless.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't thought that deeply about that, like how we might be benefiting these portals by going there. I hadn't really thought about that. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, very much so. And in fact, you don't even have to be there. I mean, for example, you can sit, I can sit here where I am right now. I'm actually sitting on one of the Earth's electromagnetic currents, the telluric current. It goes right through my apartment. This is the only place where I can put my computer, by the way, and I can do my
Mhm.
work. There's nowhere else I can do it. So it's almost like the building picked me to be here in this corner to get on
Mhm.
with my work. So I'm feeding the line through the work that I do, and it feeds me as well because I can sit here and think of, let's say, the big pyramid at Chichen Itza, okay,
Mhm.
and the building and I are now connected. Literally, it takes no time at all. And the building right now is asking me, well, what do you want? And I'm going, well, this is happening live, by the way. And I'm going, I'm just saying hello, and I hope you're doing fine, and that the tourists aren't annoying you too much. And the building right now is going back saying, I really don't like tourists. I don't like being taken for granted. I want people to come here and use me for what I've been designed for.
Mhm.
And I remember you mentioned COVID earlier on. I took groups to Egypt during COVID. We had the best tours. We're the only people in the whole country because they didn't give a damn about COVID. Because the Arab attitude is, if you live, you live. You die, you die. It's your time. It's
Right.
it's it's in Allah's hands. If
Right.
it's your time to go, it's your time to go. We just get on with life as usual. I thought I like that. We take some precautions, but still, I like the idea. And I remember standing with the group in front of the Great Pyramid, and I've been there 30 times. And for
Mhm.
the first time, the building looks at me and gives out a sigh of relief that says, thank God there's no tourists and people are here to actually work with me for the reasons for which I was built. And I said, we're very happy to come here and honor you. And we're going to give you a little bit of energy and we're going to cleanse all the energy that was being left here that shouldn't be here. And the building's like, thank you. You can
Mhm.
actually hear the buildings talk back, and it's almost like a cat. It appreciates the fact that you're going there to honor it and give it a little bit of thought of gratitude, and it says, okay, thank you for that. Now, what would you like? And I'm going, well, We're all looking for different things. Perhaps you can put some ideas into everybody's heads. Of course, this is happening as an internal dialogue. Um, People come here looking for certain things, and I want them to go back feeling much different from when they arrived so they can be better people. That's all I request for their highest good. Okay, boom. And we go back and have dinner 2 hours later, and people they're in shock. I mean, they are not the same people that I saw arriving 10 days earlier. You can see that something shifted. And a year later, they'll email me and they'll say, well, that trip and that evening reshaped my whole life. And I've given up doing this. I'm now doing this. I'm not getting as much money, but I am so happy because I feel like I'm actually, for the first time, doing exactly what I was meant to do. I said, great, thank you very much. I've done my job as an intermediary because it was the building and the spirit of place that did it. And it was you. The two of you had a communication, and that's how it works. So you don't have to actually physically go there unless you're a Virgo or you're a Taurian, because you got to feel it and touch it. The earth signs have to feel it and touch it, and that's fine. But you can also project your consciousness. You can stand on these energy lines and just project the consciousness, and there you are. Just because you're not physical doesn't mean you can't be useful. So you can be anywhere on the planet and move your consciousness, and you are there at that moment, and you can bring back information or send a sort of appreciation to a place that needs it, like Stone Circle gets knocked over by some bulldozers. Okay, let's send some energy over there. And you're rebuilding the energy field, because just because the stones have fallen over doesn't mean the place has stopped functioning. It's the energy that's important. The physical thing is just to get your attention. The energy that underlies it is the most important thing. So you can strip away the whole of Stonehenge and it'll still be functioning. You just need more people to keep feeding it all the time.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, I at one point I had some one of my colleagues say, so I was talking about doing more work with Sedona and in Sedona, and they said, well, just why don't you connect the ley lines of Sedona with your house, and that'll build the energy for everything that you're meant to be doing next, or whatever, something like that. And I did that. I could still, because I really established that now, even though I don't actively work with it, I could still feel it. When I tune back in, it feels very real. It feels like, yeah, I can feel that energy right here in the house. And so, but I hadn't thought so much about yeah, working together and, working to cleanse energies in a place, especially like Sedona with so much going on there, so many tourists and whatnot. I hadn't really thought about it that deeply because it's just not part of what I typically focus on. But like, yeah,
Now
it
you
makes
are.
it makes perfect sense now that now that you bring it up. I'm like, well, of course. I mean, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
So
because you should be of service to the actual spirit world, because it can't intervene on your behalf unless you ask it to. And so it's an exchange. You're giving a little bit and you're getting a little bit back. And so many healers that I've come across, they are living in places where the energy lines run through their buildings, and it's usually not the ones that you think that you're going to be there. So it's like, yeah, I want the one of the energy lines that comes from Sedona to go from my building. Well, stop right there. What if that energy line has a purpose already? It may not be that energy line. It may be a tributary of that line, or it may be a completely different energy line because you're asking for something specific for yourself. That line may have a completely different purpose. And years ago, when I finally sort of dissected all of this stuff about how temples and sacred sites work, I was actually teaching a program called Temple Making, which is now a video that's available. And basically, I was teaching people how to create their own power of place in their own building, their own apartment, or even their own lawn. There's one guy that built a sacred site that's 50 miles wide across Nova Scotia to take in 5 towns where the rate of disease was really, really high. And once he tuned that energy within that area, the rate of healing went up dramatically. So this very powerful stuff. You can actually build your own portal wherever you live. And but again, you have to be very concise on what it is that you're asking for, and you'll only bring in the very ingredients that the spirit of place deems necessary for your highest good. I tried this years ago when I was first learning the process with the house I had in Wiltshire, not far from Stonehenge and Avebury, by the way, so I was very spoiled. But the house itself happened to be right on one of the energy lines that connects a whole bunch of like 12 different ancient places that mirrors a constellation in the sky. And I thought, oh, I'd love to have that energy in my house. So, of course, there's a technique for drawing the energy to the building. And then the next morning I'd wake up and go, that's funny. I thought it was here yesterday. And I'd go and measure it and it's gone. And then I spoke to someone who really did know what she was doing. She says, well, think about it for a second. That energy line that you're trying to attract into your building, yeah, you can attract it. But if it's not meant to be in your building and you're not meant to use it, it's going to go back to doing what you're supposed to do. It kind of obliged you to say, yeah, you can do it, but you know what? It's not my job to be here. You need to attract something very differently. Let go of what it is that you think you want and send out a very general thought about attracting the energy, and the right energy will come. And I thought, oh, I like that. Well, once I learned that, I completely forgot about attracting the energy that connects all these sites to Stonehenge. I attracted something completely different, and then it worked. It fell into place. So I'm imposing my will on the system, the energy of place, and it's saying, yeah, you can do it, but that's not what I'm here for. Forget that thought. Write your request, and the right thing will come to manifest, and that's how it works. So it's information that can actually be very practical and be applied on a regular basis around the world.
I suppose it's like anything else. If you want to manifest millions of dollars, maybe you can. Doesn't mean you have
We've done
the right
that.
medicine for you, the way you go about doing it and everything else.
Don't even bring that up. I can't tell you how many times the people that I work with and I have done this, and every year we get together, laugh about how many millions we've lost by getting the right numbers and something happening at the last second that stops you buying the ticket. And the next morning, you've got the numbers, but you've lost $120 million again. We're up to 1.2 billion now that we've lost. We're keeping track of this. And yeah, it makes you feel sick after a while, but it makes you realize that you can't just use this for your ego.
Right.
If your purpose in life was not to become rich by winning the lottery, you're not going to win the lottery. Trust me on this. Every time I've actually won, I got $1. Okay, because the universe is saying, yeah, you can do it. The systems that you've learned over time, you can use it to create all of this, but it's not your job to become rich by winning the lottery. You're going to have to go out and, earn a living the hard way. And yeah, it has been hard, but that's my sole purpose. Some people want to come here to be poor. Some people came here to be stinking rich. And who are we to say that that's right or wrong? That's their particular path. So yeah, no, it's a bit of a sick joke that we've used this to try and win the lottery. We get it every single time, and it always fails every single time.
Right, right, exactly. I mean, I'd say like because I work with people that are in business and whatnot and help them. And yeah, I mean, you can make a lot of money in a business, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be happy or
Yeah.
in other words, some people are if they do it in accordance to, like you said, to what's really their sole purpose calling, but they do it in a way for their ego. Of course, it's all suffering, and all the more money is just all the more suffering, really. And even if they tell you they're happy, it's just the opposite. So that's what
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of over the years. So I think that like these sites can do a lot to help people with whatever their stuck points are in their journey. Where, I thought I was doing all the things I'm supposed to be doing to have the life I want, and you all of a sudden you drop into one of these portals and you get awakened to something new, right? You might be on a whole different trajectory. And I totally agree. Like you might be doing your purpose, so to speak, and doing your thing, making tons of money. You might not be making much, but it's all about like that soul satisfying feeling you have. I mean, for me, I
Yeah.
just feel like I want to bring my utmost heart and integrity into everything that I do. And because I know the penalty is big if you don't, like if you don't really bring, your true, even if you could let me sell you on this idea or that idea or whatever, like in business, like you can, but if it's not of the utmost highest good for everybody, you're in the penalty box ultimately, one way or another. Even how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with money per se. There's nothing wrong with having a nice car and a big house. But how attached are you to these things? And is it part of your makeup to have this? Some people, yeah, it is. Some people, it just isn't. And the trick is, if you're feeling a certain joy in the work that you're doing, you are doing the right thing. People say, well, you must be very lucky. You got 4 international bestsellers now. I said, yeah, I'm very lucky. But you know what? That's not how I made my money. I make most of my money because I have 32 income streams, which include videos, it includes touring, it includes speaking. I mean, I really work my payoff to do what I do, because I was probably a very rich king in a previous lifetime, or a queen, who knows. And this lifetime, I figured, you know what? I've already done that. Now I'm going to have to work the hard way. I'm going to have to do it all myself. And I do. People think I have a massive office and people helping me. No, I am the help. I am the CEO and the guy who does the cooking and the sweeping of the debris outside my front door. And sometimes I'll take out the cat poop as well that's landed on my backyard. But that's my makeup. I'm here to do a certain thing. But I'm also, despite the fact it's very difficult, and I'm still, at my age, still working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I am very happy with what I do. It really brings me a great joy, because the joy I get is seeing other people take what I've written, not as gospel, but take the bits that make sense, and their lives have improved. And that for me that is everything. I never would have imagined that I would have come here to the earth to be someone who's improved other people's lives. Never crossed my mind, but I see the joy that it brings them and the peace that it brings them. So it's, if I can die, tomorrow, or hopefully, after this podcast, and I can say, I've actually improved things a little bit while I was here, and that's good enough for me. So sometimes, because your life is difficult, don't worry about it. If it's joyful, that's what you're supposed to be doing. Years ago, what, 25, I don't know when it was, over 2 decades ago, I was making a lot of money as a creative director in advertising, and I was miserable doing it. I was pretty good at what I did. I got awards for my work, but the best stuff I did, and the most joyful stuff I did, was doing things for charity and bringing in money for people that needed it. And then I realized I'm doing the wrong thing. And that's when you took a leap of faith. You end up with no money. You've lost your marriage and your house and your cats and your sports cars. But you know what? I was so happy talking to large upright rocks. It's like my extended family. They never
Yes.
let me down, and I never take them for granted either. But yeah, that's how it really began, by literally losing everything that I've worked for and rebuilding myself. It's taken 20 years to get back into a healthy bank account. So that's hard work. But you know what? I wouldn't trade it for anything else, because I'm doing exactly what I'm doing, and it's the same thing for anybody else. I'm just using my example as an example for you.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like that's, I think it's always because of all we're gonna do the energy scan, downloading stuff in a sec. And I always say, like, it's based on what is meant for this lifetime in a sense. I mean, what are you being guided to, experience next? Like you said, I was king in one lifetime, maybe a pauper in another. And my experience of scanning people is people want to experience all these different things. That's why it all exists. So in
Exactly.
part, like that consciousness wants to experience all these different things. So that's why we get to have those experiences. And I have found myself at times, I'll say, well, I could do that, but I've already done that before, and I haven't in this life, but like I feel like I have. Somehow I feel like I've already been down that path. I know what that's like. So why do it again? I already know what that's like. So
Yeah,
let's
it's
try
funny, when
something.
I was growing up and I had no idea what I wanted to do for a living apart from being a rock star. I didn't realize it was going to be a different type of rock. But the joke was on me in the end. I had the hair down to here and all of that. I met Freddie Mercury and people like that. But that's not where I was meant to go. And I originally wanted to be an architect, and I tried sort of pushing the idea for a couple of weeks. Then I realized, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be an architect, because I think I've done it. And I thought, as a 14-year-old, it's the dumbest thing to say. And then my first trip to Egypt with a very incredible psychic, she's incredibly gifted, taught me much of what I know. And I was going into Luxor Temple, which is ironically a set of stamps that I've collected when I was younger. I had a diorama of two stamps. It was a front of Luxor Temple, and I still have them. And there I am, 50 years later or so, 40 years later, in front of the temple that I had these stamps for. And I looked at it and went, that's not how I left it. That's the first words out of my mouth when I got there. And the Isabel, the channeler that was standing next to me, she goes, "It's all coming back now, isn't it?" I said, "Yeah, but come on. We all want to think we were very important people in the previous lifetime. Everybody wants to do that." I said, "Yeah, but you can actually own it this time." I said, "Why?" "Because you were one of the architects of Luxor." I said, "Oh," and that's why I realized at that moment, and I know exactly the period that we're talking about, because some of the people that are commemorated in that temple, that's like my extended family, but that's another conversation.
Mhm.
And I'm still very protective of them, by the way, to this very, very day, 3,500 years later. But I recognized part of the temple as though it was yesterday, but I realized I've done it. I don't have to do that again. But I'm still connected to the concept of temple building and sacred space because it's still in my blood, so to speak. So it is funny that that still remains in your sort of consciousness, and you come here to try another aspect of it. And I think the Egyptians said it very well. They said, you know, when you incarnate, the soul goes through this sort of mind blindness, and you basically forget what you've come here to do. You basically you've gone through a spiritual death, and you spent the rest of your life trying to figure out from your soul's perspective what it is that I'm doing here. And if you're lucky enough to understand that, you're really way ahead of the pack. And that's what the Greeks and the Indians said. This is why we built these special hotspots on the face of the earth, is so that when you walk in, you forget about all your problems. You bring yourself in here and you remind yourself you're putting yourself in an environment that allows you to leave the body for a minute or for hours, if you're lucky, to come back with total memory of your soul purpose. And the more you do it, and this is the important thing, the more you interact with sacred space and with portals, the more you begin to understand how they work, and it becomes second nature. It's like driving a car. You know, you remember the first time you took a driving test, you were absolutely petrified, and you were glued to the steering wheel and you're perspiring. Well, look at you now. When you drive 500 miles, it's like, oh, you did it with your eyes closed. It's the same thing with these places. The more you do it, the more it becomes second nature. The more you remember, you start getting dreams, visions, voices coming out of middle of nowhere, and it's absolutely real, by the way. And in my case, I start scribbling things down like an idiot. I have to go and research it, and then I find that the information is actually there. That's part of my job. You know, I can't just say, "Oh, I dreamed this up in a temple in Egypt." No, I have to actually write down the source and figure out how all these things connect by reading some very old books written on animal skin. But the information is there. Otherwise, you know, all the skeptics that I'm trying to convince about this mumbo jumbo wouldn't believe me. So that's my job, you see, that's my interaction.
Do you want to meditate and make money? Let it be simple. Let it be easy. Let it be fun. Go to yoursacredpurpose.com and get your free meditate, make money meditation today.
Right. Wow. Yeah, this is so great. We could go on and on, but we've got the books for the rest and all your other interviews online as well on the ongoing conversation, right? So I'd love for you to share with everybody anywhere you would like to direct them, especially to the Portals book as well. I know there's others in that book as well, in that one, right?
Yeah, and I didn't actually want to write a book for quite a long time. I need a break. I want to learn something new as well. I always said that if I have nothing new to say, I'm not going to cash in on this and rip people off. If I have something important to say, I'll say it. If it's fresh, I'll say it. And then I was convinced by this publisher who has this wonderful series of Common Sentience, and she said, you know what? We have one book missing in the whole series called Portals. And I thought, okay. You could probably write this in your sleep. I said, I probably could. And it actually took no time at all to write because it's all in here. And I thought, it's true. I've been talking about this for a long time, but I've never actually written it down. And I like the idea that the middle section has a whole group of people who were asked to share experiences, and they had no idea what I was going to write. And then I didn't read their experiences. I didn't want to prejudice one with the other. And so I end up validating what they had written about, and then that validating what I'd written about in the first chapter. And at the end, is a practical section, which I thought was important. You know, how to approach portals, you know, how to become more mindful. That's the one thing that people don't do when you approach these temples, to be mindful. And I provide a very easy trick on how to do this. It takes you 15 minutes, and after that, you're on your way to being absolutely psychic at any time of day. Trust me on this, it really works, and it's deadly easy. And I'm not going to give it away. So essentially, that's how how I got to write the book, because it was a very practical and very useful thing at a time for this information is right now. We really need this more urgently than ever. So yes, you'll find this at invisibletemple.com, along with all the other books and 16 documentaries now. It's gone up from 14. So there's a lot of information there for everybody, but it's all pretty much self-empowering to try and get you to remember that you're the God you've been waiting for all along.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, fantastic. Well, check it all out at invisibletemple.com. I do know the Portals books has, yeah, some really cool stories in it from what I was reading about it. I haven't, read it yet myself, but I did notice there's all kinds of the type of stories we were talking about here. Well, there's more and more of those in that book apparently, right? So definitely check that out at invisibletemple.com, everything there. And if you're as fascinated as I am by all this stuff, I'm sure you will. So okay, so we're going to do the energy scan show, energy scan segment. I want to say I used to do whole shows on with energy scans, and maybe do them again. But anyway, energy. Maybe that's a sign. Okay, energy scan segment of the show where I just do a couple of downloads for our guests. Freddie, I just I just have a little process I do to center my attention and share a couple of downloads for you in the audience. Usually pertains directly to something about you that might be a reminder or something helpful to you, and that everybody else can utilize maybe too. So are you open and ready to receive something?
As long as it's not go out and buy the winning lottery numbers again. It's like, oh, we've already been there. Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, okay. So yeah. Okay. I'm going to refrain from more jokes because there's a lot of jokes I could come up with off of that one. All right. So let's dive in. All right, Freddie. Let me tune in here for a sec. Yeah. Again, I think like one of the cool things is that I don't remember a lot of stuff, but I see you'll know what it is, but I see like that. Well, I forget the name of it, but it's that Egyptian energy, the bird, like a it's almost I don't want to say what kind of bird because I'm horrible at that too. It's this bird energy, and I forget. Let's see if I don't know. So anyway, I get that energy coming in. I get you. I get pulsing energy, like in your a very pulsing energy for you in your third eye, and so I see. I share what I see. So I just get that this attunement you have with that, and like I feel transported to those pyramids right away, like the chambers you're talking about. I feel that energy right away. And I just what I do see in the crown chakra is I actually the way I perceive it, the way I just say it, this is what comes through, is there's sort of a tension around the crown chakra a circle, and there's some easy flowing energy coming to the top in the center, and this energy around is definitely a focused kind of energy. Is a focused energy. There is actually I will just say this, a residue of like, I want to say like a sense of maybe outrage or anger, and it could be that there's more, and I think it fuels your purpose in a sense, though, that there's more to awaken to, there's more for people to see, so there can be more of this sacred energy. So there's sort of that warrior energy actually in all this. So God bless you, so to speak. So I'm just noticing that. But yeah, I mean, you definitely have that magical shaman signature that you're tuned with. Bilocate, all this sort of energy is pulsing inside you. It's pretty cool. So that's my first one big download. Let me get one more, and then I always like to have my guests comment briefly on anything that came through. So let's see what else comes through now. Yeah, I want to call it a hawk, but I don't think it's a hawk. I keep seeing that. It keeps coming through. And I feel it's almost as though you are that hawk, from that ancient time. And I don't know if this is Osiris or something like that. I might be mixing up my names, but yeah, I mean it's like it's definitely a signature too of the wisdom keeper energy. Yeah, and what else is coming through on that? Uh, yeah, I also getting something about like as I read the energy of what you're representing it within this is is a time right now where people need to claim more of their own truth and their own sovereignty. Like you said, not to just follow along with whatever the popular idea is right now or whatever. but that to be in your sovereignty, to be in your authority. So this is where I see within you the sacral chakra, the power center lighting up more. That there's an anchor inside you too for it. Like there's an anchor, so some floating up energy still, but there's this anchor where, and it's not just you, it's energy, the energy you're connected to, obviously. Who is the you, right? But that's a whole other story. But it's pretty cool stuff. It's pretty extraordinary. I mean, it's definitely a bit different than my usual scan of somebody. So I'll just say that. So any quick reflections on what came through, I'd be fascinated.
I feel very naked. It's quite funny because when you, I mean, I know we're communicating across computers, but I can actually feel my entire energy field expanding when you first started it. It was actually very interesting. Like you're actually in the room. It's very interesting. And I only get that when I'm really next to really psychic people. It's something that I always pick up. No, it's Horus is the symbol of the resurrected hero that gets torn apart into a million little pieces and reconstituted back into its new form. That's pretty much sums up my life in the last 30 years. Destroying who I used to be in order to become the person I came here to be. But no, it is right. I do have a sense of moral indignation as to what's happening in the world, especially right now. With what's happening in the Middle East and everything. I mean, I'm really angry about it. But again, I can't afford to be. I have little control over the situation. I can only be a sort of a guide to what things should be and putting out the information as to how things are, than to how things are perceived through the media and through the political process. So I do take all of that stuff and all the indignations that happen in normal life to most people, and rather than being angry or lashing out and be violent, and that's happened throughout most of my life, I channel it into a creative path. Someone actually joked about it. Said, you know, it's funny because your profile fits a wonderful profile of a serial killer, and yet you're such a passive B-type person that you don't really lash out. It's very rare for me to get angry at anyone. You have to really get under my skin to do that, and it's very rare when I have. So I channel all of that energy and put it into my work. That's how I ground myself. It's like, yeah, I'm so angry at the way that the world has become, and people have messed it up so badly. But you know what? I can do something better with that. And I put all of that right into my words, into every paragraph, into every video that I create, and something else comes out. So I'm taking this really dark stuff and creating some light with it. And I'm kind of happy with that because it means I'm very peaceful as a result of it. So yeah, it's taking a sort of that sort of built-in anger that you find every day in the world around you. I drive out of my driveway and there's some idiot literally crashing into my vehicle every single time. And I'm going, there's a way around this. So you're using that sort of thing to feed something very creative, and that's something that I'm actually quite proud of. I'm not proud of many things, I have to say. I'm very self-critical, but I am proud of the fact that I don't get easily ruffled and get angry about stuff. I just channel it into something else.
Right, right. Well, that's fantastic.
So
Yeah.
that's probably what's popping up, and that is the sign, essentially, of Horus, the one that's transmuted all of this former stuff and sees a bigger picture. You know, the falcon rises above the horizon, sees the big picture. You know, when you can see, when you're 500 feet above in the sky, you go, oh, I see how all this connects. Whereas the snake that flows on the ground is attached to the soil. It's a very local thing. So next time you look at the headdresses of the Egyptian pharaohs with the snake and the falcon or the vulture, you see the person that's actually been initiated into the mysteries. They're no longer associated with the physical. They have one step above as a bird. They see the horizon, the big picture. And that's essentially what I do in my work in terms of writing. So kudos, well spotted. I'm glad you didn't go into the embarrassing stuff. I'm very proud of
I also noticed one of these, one of those.
that. Is it time to leave yet?
Right. That'd be funny. Anyway, that was really cool. I'm glad you shared, you shared back those. Sometimes I do these every once in a while, I'll read somebody and be like, okay, moving right along. I don't want to admit to any of it.
God,
But
that was
that
close.
voice. So everybody, if you want to check me out, go to yoursacredpurpose.com. There's a free meditate and make money meditation. So I'm all about it. Well, once you get connected up and you just follow your path, your genuine path, everything, the signals turn on, you're guided, everything starts flowing, and that's the way to go. So that meditation will help you with that. So check that out right on the website when you go there. And if you want me to tune into you and do the intuitive psychic reading with you, you can go ahead and get a reading. You can find that on the site with the Rock Your Sacred Purpose energy scan consultation. And if you're a spiritual entrepreneur or healer or coach type, I help you to see what might really want to happen for you and help get you aligned with that. So you can check that out at yoursacredpurpose.com. All right, Freddie. Well, as we're wrapping up, I always ask, do you have any last words, any last pieces of wisdom?
Oh, that's the most difficult question you could possibly ask me. No, I mean, I think that we're in a much better place globally than we think we are. Yeah, there's a lot of nonsense going on right now, but that's also a sign that the people that are doing the right work, all the light workers, they're having an effect, because there's a response from the people that are holding on to an old paradigm, and they're going to try and hold on for their life. They will wipe out millions of people, and it's happening right now all over the place. But you know what? Just forget about that for a second, because in terms of agreements, we've all agreed to. Some of us came here to shine a beacon. Some came here to die in order to show the futility of hatred. Believe it or not, that is an actual universal truth. Sometimes when a lot of people are murdered or die in a natural disaster, is to wake up another section of the planet to show how things should not be, and you need to recalibrate. So don't take it too personally. Don't get dragged in. There's a bigger thing at work here, and I see more hope and joy wherever I travel around the world. Even in Ohio, very conservative Ohio, there's a lot of people doing great positive things behind the scenes. So be part of that. Be thankful that the point of critical mass is much closer than you think. But before we get there, a lot more darkness is probably going to be happening. But it will be for a good cause, because it will wake up more people. And as more people wake up, then we change the paradigm. It's the way it's always been. So it's just that this time we're taking it pretty close to the fuses, right down to the edge of the dynamite. I hope that we'll do the right thing, and I'm pretty confident. So, but just keep doing the right thing. That's the most important thing. Keep planting your garden and be an example to others.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, it's a nail biter, isn't it? Here we go. How's it going to turn out?
Everybody loves a nail biter.
Oh my goodness. Well, this is really a fantastic having you on. I'm so grateful. So thanks for being on
Thanks,
today with me, Freddie.
Oh, my pleasure. Good luck.
Thanks. All right. And to all the listeners, keep on tuning in, and we'll keep on rocking it here at Spiritual Rockstar Podcast. Till the next time, everyone. You're listening to Spiritual Rockstar Podcast. Stay tuned for our next upcoming new episodes each Saturday. Please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review to help us to serve you best. As a reminder, you can get your free Meditate and Make Money meditation at www.yoursacredpurpose.com to rock your sacred purpose. Goodbye for now, everybody.